Hello and welcome. The fog curls around your ankles with fingers of ice, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls its mournful song into the perpetual twilight. You have crossed a threshold you did not notice, stepped past a boundary that exists between one heartbeat and the next. The world you knew has faded behind you like a half-remembered dream. And now, you find yourself walking along a muddy road where the trees lean inward with gnarled, arthritic branches. The mists have claimed you, as they have claimed countless others before. Welcome to Barovia, where the sun never truly rises, where hope comes to die, and where one man's damnation has cursed an entire land for centuries beyond counting. But to understand how you arrived here, walking this forsaken road toward a destiny written in blood and sorrow, you must first understand the beginning. You must know the story of a man who was once a hero, a conqueror, a brother, and would have been a lover, a man who became something far worse than any monster that prowls the night. You must know the tale of Count Strahd von Zarovich, the vampire who rules this domain with an iron fist and a heart frozen in eternal anguish. The story begins not in darkness, but in glory. Picture, if you will, a young warrior named Strahd von Zarovich, riding at the head of his armies across a land that would one day bear the name Barovia. This was centuries ago, long before the mists came, when the valley was merely another prize to be claimed through conquest. Strahd was not born a monster. He was born to nobility as the son of Baron von Zarovich and Queen Ravenloft, raised in the traditions of warfare and honor, trained from childhood to lead men into battle and emerge victorious. His family name carried weight, carried expectation, and young Strahd bore that burden with fierce determination. He was a brilliant tactician, a warrior without peer, a general who understood not just the art of war, but the psychology of it. His enemies fell before him like wheat before the scythe. One by one, the petty kingdoms and tribal lands that dotted the region succumbed to his military genius. The soldiers who followed him did so with absolute loyalty, for Strahd led from the front, never asking his men to face dangers he himself would not confront. He was wounded countless times in battle, bore scars across his flesh like a map of his conquests. And yet, he never faltered, never retreated, never showed weakness. But warfare is not kind to the body or the soul. With each passing year, Strahd felt the weight of time pressing down upon his shoulders. He watched his soldiers grow old, retire to farms and families, while he continued the endless campaign. He watched young recruits become grizzled veterans, while he pushed deeper into new territories. The wars stretched on, year after year, decade after decade. Strahd's hair turned from black to gray, his face lined with the passage of countless campaigns. His body, once so strong and vital, began to ache with the accumulated damage of 1,000 battles. And through it all, his younger brother Sergei remained safe at home. Sergei the gentle, Sergei the kind, Sergei who had never lifted a sword in anger, who had never felt the spray of blood across his face or heard the screams of dying men. Sergei, who remained young and handsome while Strahd aged, and weathered like stone, left too long in the elements. The resentment grew slowly, quietly, like a cancer in Strahd's heart. He loved his brother, truly he did. But that love was poisoned by envy, by the bitter knowledge that while he sacrificed everything for glory and conquest, Sergei sacrificed nothing, and yet remained perfect, unmarred, untouched by the cruelties of war. Finally, after decades of bloodshed, Strahd claimed his prize. The valley of Barovia fell under his control, and he ordered the construction of a castle upon the very pillar of stone that overlooked the conquered lands. Castle Ravenloft rose from the mountainside like a monument to his achievements, its towers piercing the sky, its walls thick enough to withstand any siege. It was a masterwork of architecture, a fortress that could stand for 1,000 years. Strahd moved his court to this new seat of power, and for a brief moment, he allowed himself to believe that his struggles had earned him peace. It was then that Sergei arrived, traveling to Barovia to join his brother in this new domain. And with Sergei came a young woman whose beauty struck Strahd like a physical blow. Her name was Tatiana, and she was unlike anyone the old warrior had ever encountered. She moved with grace, spoke with intelligence, laughed with genuine joy. In her presence, Strahd felt the weight of his years more keenly than ever before. He looked at his reflection in the polished surfaces of his new castle and saw an old man staring back, gray and worn and tired. But when Tatiana looked at Sergei, her eyes shone with love. Young love, pure and innocent, and untainted by the darkness that had consumed so much of Strahd's life. Sergei, who had never known war, who had never taken a life, who remained soft and gentle and kind, had won the heart of this magnificent woman simply by being himself. The injustice of it burned in Strahd's chest like molten iron. He had conquered nations, led armies, built an empire, and yet this one thing, this simple human connection, was denied to him. Tatiana would smile politely when Strahd spoke to her, would thank him graciously for his hospitality. But her heart belonged entirely to his younger brother. The engagement was announced with great celebration throughout Castle Ravenloft. Sergei and Tatiana would be married, would begin their life together in this new domain, would fill these halls with children and laughter. The wedding was planned with meticulous care, every detail arranged to perfection. Strahd watched these preparations with a smile frozen on his face, while inside, the darkness grew and festered. He was the conqueror, the lord of this domain, the man who had earned everything through blood and sacrifice. And yet, he was expected to simply stand aside and watch his brother claim this prize. No, Strahd would not accept this injustice. He had spent his entire life taking what he wanted through force of will and strength of arms. Why should this be any different? If age had weakened him, if time had stolen his youth, then he would find another way. There were secrets in this valley, ancient secrets, whispers of dark powers that could grant a man what he most desired. Strahd began to search, to seek out forbidden knowledge, to make bargains that no sane man would consider. The sources vary in their telling of how Strahd discovered what he sought, though the core truth remains consistent. Based on what fragments of history survive, we can assume he found ancient texts or traveled to places of dark power where knowledge was offered in exchange for terrible prices. This could imply that the Amber Temple in the mountains called to him, or that other forces guided his steps toward damnation. Regardless of the source, Strahd learned what he needed to know. There was a way to cheat death, to reclaim his youth, to become something beyond mortal limitations. The price was steep, steeper than anything he had paid before. But Strahd had spent a lifetime paying prices. What was one more cost, even if it meant his very soul? The wedding day arrived with all the pageantry befitting a noble ceremony. Castle Ravenloft was decorated with flowers and banners, filled with guests who had traveled from across the domain to witness the union. Musicians played in the great hall. Servants rushed about with platters of food and flagons of wine. Sergei stood prepared for the ceremony in his finest clothes, his face glowing with happiness. Tatiana was resplendent in her wedding dress, her beauty transcendent, her smile radiant. It was a perfect moment, a scene of pure joy and celebration. Strahd watched from the shadows, and in his heart, something fundamental broke. What happened next is recorded in blood and screaming. Strahd had made his preparations, had performed the necessary rituals, had spoken the words that should never be uttered, and made a pact with forces best left unnamed. On the day of the wedding, he enacted his plan with the cold precision of a military campaign. Sergei was the first to die. Strahd murdered his own brother, spilled Sergei's blood upon the stones of Castle Ravenloft, and in doing so, completed the first part of the ritual that would transform him from man into vampire. The method varies between tellings, but the result remains the same. Fratricide committed in pursuit of impossible love. Tatiana discovered what had happened and understood immediately the depths of Strahd's crime. She fled through the castle, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a ghost, while Strahd pursued. He called out to her, tried to explain, tried to make her understand that he had done this for them, for their future together. But Tatiana saw only a monster wearing the face of her beloved's brother. She ran through corridors and up staircases, her heart pounding with terror, until she found herself on the battlements high above the valley floor. Strahd cornered her there, blocking her escape, reaching out with hands already beginning to change, to grow pale and cold. He spoke of love, of eternity, of the life they could share together. But Tatiana looked into his eyes and saw nothing she recognized, nothing human or kind or good. Rather than submit to this creature, rather than allow him to claim her as some prize of war, she threw herself from the battlements. Her body fell like a white bird with broken wings, tumbling through the air to be swallowed by the darkness below. Strahd watched her fall, and in that moment, he felt something he had not felt in all his years of warfare and conquest. He felt his heart break. He had won nothing. He had lost everything. The transformation he had begun could not be stopped. The bargain he had made could not be unmade. As Tatiana's body disappeared into the mists far below, Strahd von Zarovich completed his metamorphosis into something no longer human. And that is when they came. The mists rose from the valley like a living thing, thick and impenetrable, cutting off every road, sealing every mountain pass. The boundaries of Barovia contracted, compressed, until the entire domain was trapped within a prison of fog. The guests at the wedding found themselves unable to leave, discovered that every path they took led them back to where they started. The mists had claimed Castle Ravenloft, claimed the valley, claimed everything and everyone within it. Strahd stood upon the battlements, his transformation complete, and understood with terrible clarity what had happened. He had not escaped death. He had not won his prize. He had been tricked, manipulated, transformed into an instrument of suffering. The power that had offered him immortality had never intended to give him what he truly wanted. It had simply wanted a prisoner, a toy to torment, a soul to feed upon for all eternity. The curse was comprehensive in its cruelty. Strahd would indeed live forever, would possess strength and power beyond mortal limits. But he would never again feel the warmth of the sun upon his face. He would never know peace or rest or satisfaction. And Tatiana, the woman he had destroyed everything to possess, would return to him again and again and again. She would be reborn in new bodies, new lives, new identities. Each time Strahd would find her, would recognize her soul, would attempt to claim her. And each time she would die rather than accept him. Whether through suicide or accident or the intervention of others, Tatiana would always slip through his fingers at the final moment, leaving him to wait for her next incarnation. This is the curse that defines Barovia. This is the torment that has continued for centuries, repeating in an endless cycle of hope and despair. Strahd is the Dark Lord of this domain, its absolute ruler, possessing power that makes him nearly invincible within these borders. Yet he is also the most imprisoned of all who dwell here, trapped by his own actions, punished by forces he cannot fight or flee. Every soul that enters Barovia is drawn into this cycle, becomes another piece on a board that Strahd can never truly control. Section 2. The lands of Barovia and their inhabitants. The road beneath your feet is called the Old Svalak Road, and it serves as the primary artery connecting the three major settlements of Barovia. This ancient path winds through the valley, crossing rivers on stone bridges that have stood for centuries, passing through forests so dense that daylight, such as it is, barely penetrates the canopy. Along this road, you encounter mile markers carved with symbols that date back to before the mists came, when this land was merely another conquered territory, and not yet a prison. The road is maintained after a fashion, though by whom remains unclear. Perhaps the Vistani, those mysterious travelers who seem immune to many of Barovia's dangers. Perhaps by the villages themselves, each community doing its part to keep the only connection between settlements passable. Based on what we know of how this domain functions, we can assume the road maintains itself, sustained by the same dark magic that keeps everything in this domain locked in its cursed state. Barovia is not large as nations go. Were you to walk from its eastern border to its western edge, the journey would take perhaps 5 or 6 days at a steady pace. From north to south, even less. Yet this compact domain contains a remarkable variety of terrain and locations, each with its own character, its own history, its own particular brand of suffering. The domain is shaped like a valley, surrounded on all sides by mountains that rise into clouds which never seem to clear. And beyond those mountains, the mists form an impenetrable barrier that marks the true boundaries of this prison. The first settlement you encounter when traveling the old Svalik road is the village of Barovia itself, a collection of perhaps 100 buildings clustered around a small church. This village sits in the shadow of Castle Ravenloft, close enough that on clear nights, the inhabitants can look up and see lights burning in Strahd's windows, can know with certainty that their master is awake and watching. The proximity to Castle Ravenloft means this village suffers more than the others, bears the brunt of Strahd's attention and his appetites. The village of Barovia is built primarily of wood and stone, its buildings simple and functional, designed for survival rather than beauty. Most structures are single-story, with steep roofs to shed the rain and snow that fall with depressing regularity. Windows are small and often shuttered, for who would want large openings through which the night might enter? Gardens are meager, producing only the hardiest vegetables, for the soil here is poor and the growing season abbreviated by the perpetual gloom. Livestock are kept close to houses, penned in yards where they can be watched and protected. For wolves and worse things hunger constantly in the darkness beyond the village limits. The streets of the village are mud most of the year, churned into a thick soup by the passage of feet and cartwheels. On dry days, this mud hardens into ruts that twist ankles and make walking treacherous. Boardwalks run along some streets, providing slightly more stable footing, though these too are often warped and splintered by age and weather. The village has no wall, no palisade, no defensive structure beyond the individual homes themselves. What would be the point? If Strahd wanted to destroy this village, no wall would stop him. If wolves or other monsters attacked in force, the villagers would simply bar their doors and pray to survive until morning. At the heart of the village stands the church, a stone building larger than any other in the settlement. Its bell tower rising above the rooftops, like a finger pointing at the clouded sky. This church is dedicated to the Morning Lord, a deity associated with sun and renewal and hope, concepts that seem almost laughable in a land where the sun never truly shines and hope dies as quickly as it sparks. The priest who tends this church, Father Donovich, struggles to maintain faith in the face of endless darkness, performing rituals more from habit than conviction, offering prayers that seem to echo into emptiness rather than reaching any divine ear. The basement of this church holds a terrible secret. Locked away in a cell below the sanctuary is a young man named Doru, son of the priest. Doru was transformed into a vampire spawn after participating in a failed revolt against Strahd, an attempt by young villagers who believed they could storm Castle Ravenloft and destroy the Count. The revolt ended, as all such attempts end, in death and suffering. Most of the young revolutionaries were killed outright. Doru was turned, sent back to his village as a living reminder of what happens to those who resist. His father cannot bring himself to destroy his own child, despite knowing that the creature below is no longer truly his son. And so Doru remains imprisoned, slowly starving, driven mad by hunger and the knowledge of what he has become. The village's burgomaster, Kalyan Indarovich, serves as the settlement's leader, though the position brings more burden than privilege. Kalyan has spent recent weeks in a state of mounting terror, for his adopted daughter has attracted Strahd's attention, and the Count's visits have left her marked in ways that cannot be hidden or denied. By the time travelers typically arrive in the village of Barovia, Kalyan is either dead or dying. His heart, having given out under the strain of trying to protect someone from a threat he has no power to oppose. Kalyan's daughter, Irina Kalyana, is the current incarnation of Tatiana, though she does not know this, knows only that she has attracted the unwanted attention of Count Strahd von Zarovich. Based on the pattern established over centuries, she carries Tatiana's soul, reborn into a new body with no memory of her previous existences. Irina is brave, far braver than most who live in this cursed land. But even her courage wavers when she thinks of what awaits her if Strahd claims her completely. She has been bitten twice already, bears the marks on her neck, and understands that a third bite will complete her transformation into something no longer fully human. Irina's adopted brother, Ismark Kalyanovich, whom the villagers call Ismark the Lesser, stands as her primary protector. Ismark earned his nickname not through cowardice, but through the impossible standard of comparison. His father was called Ismark the Great, and no son could hope to match such a legacy. The younger Ismark is competent with a blade, strong and determined, but he understands his limitations. He cannot fight Strahd directly, cannot hope to stand against a creature of such power. His only option is to flee with Irina, to try to reach one of the other settlements where she might find temporary sanctuary. But temporary is all it can ever be, for nowhere in Barovia offers true safety from the Count. On the outskirts of the village, at the end of a street that seems to lead nowhere, stands a house that the locals avoid with religious fervor. They call it the Death House when they speak of it at all, though most prefer not to speak of it, prefer to pretend it does not exist. This structure looms 3 stories tall, its architecture suggesting wealth and refinement that seem out of place in this poverty-stricken village. The windows are dark, the doors closed, but occasionally smoke rises from the chimneys, as though someone within maintains fires against the cold. Yet no one has lived in the Death House for years, or so the villagers claim when pressed. Leaving the village of Barovia behind, you continue west along the old Svalak road, passing through the forest of the same name. This forest is ancient and dark, its trees growing so close together that their branches intertwine overhead, creating a perpetual twilight beneath the canopy. The sounds of the forest are wrong somehow. You hear wolves howling, certainly, but also stranger noises, whispers that might be wind through leaves, or might be voices speaking words you cannot quite understand. Branch snaps that suggest something large moving parallel to the road, but never coming into view. Chittering and clicking that speaks of insects or small animals, but seems too organized, too purposeful to be natural. The forest is home to many dangers beyond simple wolves. Dire wolves hunt here, creatures twice the size of their normal cousins, with jaws powerful enough to crush bone and intelligence that borders on human cunning. Werewolves maintain dens in the deeper parts of the forest, and these lycanthropes are not tragic victims of circumstance. These are willing servants of evil who embraced their transformation and now revel in the freedom it grants them. They hunt in packs, coordinate their attacks with military precision, and show no mercy to those they catch. Within the forest, you might also encounter Strahd's undead servants, zombies that shuffle through the undergrowth, their bodies animated by necromantic energy that cares nothing for decay. Skeletons that retain enough coordination to use weapons and armor, forming patrols that watch for intruders or fugitives. Ghosts bound to specific locations, doomed to repeat the moments of their deaths for eternity. The forest itself seems malevolent at times, as though the trees themselves resent your presence, as though the very ground beneath your feet wishes you harm. After several hours of travel through this oppressive woodland, the forest begins to thin, and you catch glimpses of cultivated land ahead. Fields stretch out on either side of the road, planted with crops that struggle to grow in the weak light and poor soil. These are the outskirts of Vallaki, the largest settlement in Barovia, and the one that clings most desperately to the pretense of normalcy. Vallaki is protected by a wooden palisade 12 feet high and topped with sharpened stakes, with guard towers at regular intervals. The gates are closed at night and watched during the day by town guards who take their duties seriously. For Valaki's burgomaster has convinced them that vigilance is all that keeps the darkness at bay. This burgomaster, Baron Vargas Valakovich, is a man who has decided that if the people of his town simply refuse to acknowledge despair, refuse to give in to fear, then they can somehow hold back the tide of darkness that surrounds them. To this end, the Baron enforces mandatory participation in weekly festivals, celebrations that are meant to demonstrate the town's happiness and prosperity. There is the festival of the blazing sun. Though no true sun has shone here in centuries, the Wolf's Head Jamboree, celebrating victories over the very wolves that continue to attack with regularity. These festivals are hollow affairs, attended by citizens who smile because they must, who laugh because failure to show proper enthusiasm might result in punishment. For the Baron is not merely optimistic, he is tyrannical in his optimism. Those who speak of despair or fear, who fail to maintain the pretense of happiness, are arrested and locked in the stocks in the town square. Repeat offenders face worse punishments, held in the Baron's private dungeon beneath his mansion, subjected to measures designed to force them to confess their crimes against cheerfulness. The Baron believes absolutely in his philosophy, is convinced that collective denial of reality will somehow protect his town from the horrors that have consumed the rest of Barovia. The town itself is more developed than the village of Barovia, with proper streets and a more organized layout. Buildings here are predominantly two-story structures, with shops on the ground floor and living quarters above. There is a proper inn, the Blue Water Inn, run by the Martikov family. This inn serves as a gathering place for information and rumor, where travelers can hear news from across the domain, and where the locals come to drink wine that is surprisingly good considering the circumstances. The Martikovs harbor their own secrets, opposing Strahd in subtle ways, gathering intelligence, and helping those who seek to resist the Count's will, though they are careful never to act openly enough to draw his direct attention. Valaki also boasts several shops, a general store that somehow maintains a stock of basic supplies, a coffin maker whose business is depressingly steady, a toy shop run by a man whose creations become increasingly disturbing the longer you examine them. There is a church here too, larger and better maintained than the one in the village of Barovia, presided over by Father Lucian Petrovich. This priest maintains his faith more successfully than his counterpart in the village of Barovia. Perhaps because Valaki's greater distance from Castle Ravenloft provides some small insulation from the worst of Strahd's influence. Outside Valaki's walls stands a Vistani camp at Surpool, a gathering of colorful wagons arranged in a circle around a central fire pit. The Vistani are travelers, wanderers who came to Barovia before the mists sealed the domain, and who discovered afterward that they alone possess the ability to come and go as they please. They can enter and exit through the mists at will, can travel to other domains within the Demiplane of Dread, can even reach the world beyond if they choose. This unique freedom makes them valuable to Strahd, for they serve as his eyes and ears beyond Barovia's borders, bringing him news of the wider world and occasionally luring fresh victims into his domain. The relationship between the Vistani and Strahd is complex. They are not his servants in the traditional sense, for they maintain their independence and their culture despite his influence. But neither are they his enemies, for they benefit from the protection his favor provides. The Vistani can travel the roads of Barovia safely when others would be torn apart by wolves or monsters. They can come and go from Castle Ravenloft without fear. In exchange, they perform services for the Count, carry messages, guide travelers to destinations that serve his purposes. At the Tsur Pool encampment, you find Madame Eva, an ancient Vistani fortune teller whose age cannot be determined by appearance alone. She might be 60 or 600, her face lined with wisdom and secrets, her eyes sharp and knowing. Madame Eva reads fortunes using a deck of cards called a Taraka deck, and her readings are eerily accurate, predicting futures with uncanny precision. She claims to serve fate itself rather than Strahd, though whether there is truly a difference in this cursed land remains debatable. Those who receive readings from Madame Eva often find that her predictions shape their paths forward, guiding them toward specific items, locations, or allies that will prove crucial in whatever confrontation awaits them. Continuing west from Vallaki, the old Svalak road climbs into the Balanok Mountains, following a path that becomes increasingly treacherous as elevation increases. The air grows colder here, and snow becomes more common, even when the lower valleys experience rain. The road passes by several notable locations. The ruins of Argynvostholt, once home to an order of knights dedicated to destroying evil, but now haunted by the spirits of those same knights who failed in their mission. The Wizard of Wine's Winery, where wine is produced that supplies much of Barovia, and where dark forces threaten to destroy the source of the vineyard's productivity. At the western edge of Barovia, nestled against the mountains that mark the domain's boundary, lies the village of Kresk. This settlement is the smallest of the three major communities, with perhaps 50 families living within its walls. Unlike Vallaki's wooden palisade, Kresk is protected by walls of stone, thick and high, with only a single gate that is barred each night and opened reluctantly during the day. The people of Kresk are insular, suspicious of outsiders, for they have learned through bitter experience that most who come from outside bring danger with them. Kresk's burgomaster is Dmitry Kreskov, a practical man who focuses on the immediate needs of survival rather than philosophical debates about hope or despair. Under his leadership, Kresk maintains its walls, rations its supplies carefully, and avoids drawing Strahd's attention whenever possible. The village has a shrine to the Morning Lord, tended by a priest who offers prayers more from habit than faith. and a small cemetery where generations of Kresk's citizens rest in graves marked with simple wooden crosses. Above Kresk, higher up the mountainside, stands the Abbey of St. Markovia, a structure that once served as a sanctuary and hospital, but has since fallen into corruption. The abbey is named for St. Markovia, a holy warrior who led a crusade against Strahd centuries ago, got closer to defeating him than anyone before or since, and was ultimately destroyed for her efforts. After her death, the abbey was built in her honor, a place where the injured and the sick could find healing, where the faithful could retreat from the world to contemplate the divine. But time and the curse of Barovia have transformed the abbey into something grotesque. Its current leader calls himself the abbot, claims to be a divine being sent to heal the land, but whose healing has taken twisted forms. The abbot has spent decades attempting to create a bride for Strahd, believing that if the count can be satisfied, if his obsession with Tatiana can be resolved, then perhaps the curse will lift and Barovia will be free. To this end, the abbot has experimented on the refugees and supplicants who came to the abbey seeking help, stitching together parts from different individuals, creating abominations that live in the abbey's grounds and serve their creator with unquestioning loyalty. The abbot's greatest creation is Vasilka, a construct designed to resemble Tatiana, assembled from parts of different women. Vasilka is beautiful in a way, though there is something fundamentally wrong about her, something that sets the instincts screaming. She moves like a puppet controlled by unskilled hands, speaks in a voice that seems to come from somewhere else, smiles with a mouth that has never known genuine emotion. The abbot believes Vasilka is his masterpiece, is convinced that Strahd will accept this creation as a suitable replacement for Tatiana. This reasoning suggests a profound misunderstanding of the nature of Strahd's curse and obsession. For the Count does not seek a simulacrum, but the genuine soul he lost. Throughout these settlements and the wilderness between them, other inhabitants pursue their own agendas, caught up in the same curse that binds Strahd, but affected by it in different ways. In the forests south of Vallaki, a pack of werewolves makes its den in a cave system, led by Kirill Stoyanovich, a brutal alpha who rules through strength and savagery. These werewolves raid the settlements when prey is scarce, drag victims back to their caves to be either consumed or turned, adding to their numbers. They serve Strahd when it suits them, for the Count provides them with freedom to hunt and kill, but their loyalty extends only as far as their self-interest. Deep in the Svalak woods, in a structure surrounded by swamp and decay near the ruins of the village of Berez, lives Baba Lysaga, a witch of terrible power who claims to have been Strahd's nursemaid when he was still a mortal child. Whether this claim is true or delusion born of madness cannot be verified. But Baba Lysaga's devotion to Strahd is absolute. She sees herself as his protector, his mother in all but blood, and she destroys anyone she perceives as a threat to him. Her magic is formidable, drawing power from the swamp that surrounds her home. And she commands a hut built upon a giant skull that can walk and even fly through the air. Baba Lysaga has spent decades gathering magical power, creating guardians from scarecrows animated with trapped spirits, raising undead servants from the bodies of those who died in the swamp. She hoards knowledge and artifacts, including items that once belonged to Strahd's mother, treasures she refuses to surrender under any circumstances. Her devotion, however, goes unrequited. Strahd barely acknowledges her existence, tolerates her presence because she occasionally proves useful, but does not love her, does not value her service the way she desperately wishes he would. The Vistani maintains several camps throughout Barovia, besides the one at Sir Pool, each serving different purposes in the complex web of relationships that define this domain. Some camps serve as genuine sanctuaries, places where travelers might find safety and hospitality. Others function differently, their purposes less benign. Telling the difference requires insight and luck, for the Vistani are skilled at presenting whatever face serves their needs in the moment. In the mountains west of Kresk, accessible only by climbing treacherous paths that seem designed to discourage visitors, stands the Amber Temple. This ancient structure predates Strahd's arrival in the valley by uncounted centuries, was built by a civilization that understood dark magic at a fundamental level. The temple is carved into the mountain itself, its halls and chambers extending deep into living rock, lit by amber stones that glow with their own internal light. Within these chambers, sealed behind walls of amber harder than steel, are vestiges of evil, fragments of dark powers that offer knowledge and might to those desperate or foolish enough to bargain with them. This suggests that Strahd came to the Amber Temple centuries ago, seeking the power to become immortal, seeking the means to possess Tatiana forever. Based on the pattern of his transformation and the nature of the temple's dark gifts, we can reasonably infer that here he found what would turn him into a vampire, accepted the bargain that would curse him for eternity. The temple remains, still offering its terrible gifts to any who manage to reach it and survive the guardians that protect its secrets. Throughout all these locations, from the smallest village to the deepest wilderness, runs a common thread of suffering and despair. The people of Barovia live in a state of constant fear, knowing that death might come at any moment, that their children might be stolen in the night, that tomorrow might bring fresh horrors. They have adapted, certainly, learned to survive in circumstances that would break most societies. But survival is not the same as living, and the cost of enduring in this cursed land is measured in hope abandoned, joy forgotten, and humanity slowly eroded by endless exposure to darkness. Yet somehow, impossibly, the people endure. They maintain their routines, celebrate their hollow festivals, raise their children, and tend their fields. They find small moments of connection and warmth in the spaces between terrors. A mother singing to her child at bedtime. A young couple stealing a kiss in the shadow of the church. Old friends sharing a drink at the inn and remembering better times that might be real or might be wishful thinking. These moments of humanity persist like candles in the darkness, fragile and precious, and always at risk of being extinguished. And perhaps that is the cruelest aspect of Barovia's curse. Not that it destroys hope completely, but that it allows just enough hope to survive that suffering remains possible. For one cannot truly suffer without hope, cannot experience loss without something to lose, cannot know despair without first knowing the possibility of something better. This design suggests a malevolent intelligence behind the curse, something that understands the psychology of torment at a fundamental level. You walk through these lands now, past villages and forests, mountains and swamps, observing the inhabitants as they go about their desperate business of survival. You see the guards on Valaki's walls, scanning the horizon for threats that will inevitably come. You see the farmers in their fields, tending crops that will yield barely enough to sustain life. You see children playing games that mimic the horrors they have witnessed, acting out battles with vampires and wolves, because these are the stories they know, the reality they must learn to navigate. And everywhere, always, you feel the presence of Castle Ravenloft, looming over the domain like a dark sun around which everything else orbits, no matter where you stand in Barovia, no matter how far you travel from that pillar of stone and the castle perched upon it. You cannot escape the knowledge that Strahd is there, watching, waiting, planning his next move in a game that has continued for centuries and shows no sign of ending. Section 3. The Castle and its Cursed Lord. Castle Ravenloft looms above you now, its silhouette cutting into the perpetually overcast sky like a blade. From the valley far below, you can see the structure in all its terrible magnificence, perched upon a 1,000-foot pillar of stone that rises from the valley floor as though thrust upward by some violent geological upheaval. The castle itself seems to grow from the mountain, its foundations melding with the natural rock so completely that you cannot determine where nature ends and architecture begins. 4 towers mark the cardinal points of the structure, their peaks lost in the low-hanging clouds that perpetually shroud the upper heights. Between these towers, curtain walls stretch like the ribs of some enormous stone beast. And everywhere you look, you see windows, hundreds of windows, most dark and empty, but some flickering with candlelight that suggests habitation, suggests life, suggests that something within those walls is watching, always watching. The only approach to Castle Ravenloft is a narrow, winding road that climbs the pillar of stone in switchbacks so tight that carts can barely navigate them. This road is ancient, worn smooth by centuries of use, and treacherous in any weather. The villagers speak of travelers who lost their footing on this path, who tumbled over the edge to fall screaming into the ravines below. Some bodies are recovered. Others are simply lost, swallowed by the mists that pool in the valleys and crevasses that surround the castle's mountain. Walking this road requires concentration, requires you to watch every step. And yet, you cannot help but look up, cannot help but let your gaze drift to the castle above, drawn inexorably to the seat of power that dominates this entire domain. As you climb higher, the temperature drops. The wind picks up, whistling through gaps in the stone, carrying sounds that might be voices, or might be nothing more than the howl of air through narrow passages. The mists thin somewhat at this altitude, allowing you clearer views of the valley below, though what you see offers little comfort. From here, you can observe the full extent of Barovia's geography, the dark forests that cover most of the land, the scattered villages that huddle together like frightened animals, the roads that wind between settlements like threads connecting beads of light in an ocean of shadow. And everywhere, at the edges of vision, the mists form an impenetrable wall, sealing this domain away from whatever lies beyond. The road finally levels out as you reach the castle proper. Before you stands the main gate, an enormous structure of iron-bound wood and black metal. The portcullis is raised, revealing a tunnel that passes through the thickness of the outer wall. This tunnel is perhaps 30 feet long, and throughout its length, you can see murder holes in the ceiling above, openings through which defenders could pour boiling oil or shoot arrows at invaders. The walls are scarred from past conflicts, pockmarked with damage from siege weapons and blackened by ancient fires. Castle Ravenloft was built to withstand assault, designed by military architects who understood the principles of fortification as thoroughly as Strahd himself. Passing through the gate, you emerge into the courtyard, and here the true scale of the castle becomes apparent. The courtyard is vast, large enough to hold hundreds of soldiers, surrounded on all sides by the castle's walls and towers. The ground is paved with cobblestones, many cracked and displaced by time, and the growth of hardy weeds that push up between them. To your left stands the chapel, identifiable by its peaked roof and the holy symbols that once adorned its exterior, now weathered and broken. This is where Sergei and Tatiana were to be married, where the ceremony was transformed into murder and tragedy. The chapel doors hang open, creaking on rusted hinges, and from within comes no sense of sanctity or peace, only emptiness and decay. Directly ahead rises the keep itself, the heart of Castle Ravenloft. This massive structure towers 4 stories above the courtyard, its walls constructed from blocks of stone so precisely fitted that mortar seems almost unnecessary. Windows punctuate the walls at regular intervals, most shuttered or barred, a few showing the flicker of candlelight from within. The main entrance to the keep is through doors of carved oak, 20 feet tall and bound with black iron. These doors are currently closed, but as you watch, they swing open with a groan of ancient hinges, revealing darkness beyond. No servant appears to welcome you. No guard challenges your approach. The doors simply open, as though the castle itself has decided to admit you, to draw you into its depths. You cross the threshold, and the atmosphere changes immediately. Outside, despite the gloom and the oppressive weather, there was still a sense of open space, of sky above and ground below. Inside Castle Ravenloft, the air feels thick, weighted, as though the centuries of suffering and violence have saturated the very stones with darkness. The entrance hall stretches before you, dimly lit by candles in wall sconces that must have been placed recently, for their wax is fresh and unmelted. The floor is tiled in patterns of black and white, creating geometric designs that seem to shift and move at the edges of your vision. Ahead, a grand staircase curves upward into shadow, its steps worn in the center by countless feet over countless years. The architecture throughout Castle Ravenloft reflects the tastes and priorities of its creator. This is a military fortress first and foremost, designed for defense and control. But it is also a noble residence, built to display wealth and power. The halls are wide enough for armed men to move through freely, yet decorated with tapestries and paintings that depict scenes of conquest and glory. Suits of armor stand in alcoves, their empty helms seeming to track your movement as you pass. Weapons are mounted on walls, swords and maces and polearms, some purely decorative, others showing signs of use, their blades notched and stained with rust that might once have been blood. The keep is a maze of corridors and chambers, each serving a specific purpose in the castle's operation. On the ground floor, you find the great entry hall, the dining hall where Strahd once held feasts for visiting nobility. The kitchens where food is still prepared, though by whom, and for what purpose is unclear. For Strahd himself has no need to eat. There are servant quarters, guard rooms, storerooms packed with supplies that have outlasted their original purpose. Each space tells a story of what Castle Ravenloft once was, when it was newly built and filled with life, before the curse transformed it into a monument to suffering. The second floor contains more formal spaces. The library, which houses thousands of volumes collected over centuries, books on warfare and history, and magic and philosophy. The study where Strahd handles the administrative duties of ruling his domain. For even a cursed land requires governance, guest chambers that have hosted countless visitors over the years, most of whom never left alive. The hallways on this level are lined with portraits, paintings of Strahd himself in various periods of his long existence, of his family members both living and dead, of Tatiana in her many incarnations. These portraits follow you with their eyes, and more than one visitor has reported seeing the figures in the paintings move when not directly observed. The third floor is more private, containing Strahd's personal chambers and the rooms of his brides. These vampire consorts occupy a strange position in the castle's hierarchy. They are neither servants nor equals, but something in between, creatures who gave themselves to Strahd willingly, or were taken by him over the centuries. The three brides are Ludmilla Valisvik, the eldest and most cunning, Anastasia Kerlova, who was drawn to Strahd's dark power, and Volenta Popovsky, the youngest and most sadistic. Each bride has her own suite of rooms, decorated according to her individual tastes, frozen in the style of the era when she was turned. They are beautiful, these undead women, preserved in eternal youth. Yet there is something deeply wrong about them, something that sets the teeth on edge and raises the hairs on the back of your neck. They move with unnatural grace, speak with voices like poisoned honey, and their hunger is never truly satisfied. The brides serve Strahd's purposes, act as his agents throughout the castle, and sometimes beyond its walls. But they are not what he truly wants. They are substitutes, poor replacements for the woman he lost. Strahd treats them with a mixture of affection and contempt, values them for their usefulness, while resenting them for not being Tatiana. The brides, in turn, are jealous creatures, competitive and cruel, each vying for Strahd's attention while simultaneously plotting against one another. When Tatiana returns in a new incarnation, the brides become particularly dangerous, for they know that Strahd will abandon them entirely in his pursuit of his true obsession. The fourth floor contains the castle's towers, each serving a different function. The North Tower houses Strahd's laboratory, where he conducts experiments in necromancy and other dark arts. Here, you might find tables where corpses are transformed into undead servants, alchemical equipment for brewing potions and poisons, shelves lined with jars containing preserved specimens too disturbing to contemplate. The East Tower is a prison, its cells occupied by those who have displeased Strahd or who he wishes to keep alive for future purposes. The South Tower contains a treasury, though the wealth stored there is meaningless in a domain cut off from all trade, valuable only as a symbol of Strahd's power. The West Tower is Strahd's personal sanctum, the place he retreats to when he wishes to be truly alone, and its uppermost chamber contains something of vital importance to the castle's defense. This is the Heart of Sorrow, a massive crystal that pulses with red light like a beating heart. This artifact is directly connected to Strahd himself, strengthening him, protecting him, making him nearly invincible while he remains within Castle Ravenloft's walls. Based on what scholars have observed, the heart was created through dark magic, fueled by Strahd's own anguish and rage, suggesting it serves as a physical manifestation of his suffering, given form and purpose. As long as the heart remains intact, Strahd can shrug off wounds that would destroy lesser vampires, can regenerate from injuries that should be fatal. To truly threaten him in his own castle, one would first need to destroy the Heart of Sorrow, a task easier contemplated than accomplished, for the chamber that houses it is protected by magical wards and physical guardians of terrible power. Throughout the castle, you encounter other inhabitants, creatures that serve Strahd's will or simply exist within his domain. Vampire spawn lurk in the shadows, former servants and guards who returned, but not granted the full power of true vampirism. They retain enough intelligence to follow orders, but lack the autonomy to act independently. These spawns serve as guards and enforcers, patrolling the castle's corridors, watching for intruders or signs of rebellion. They attack without warning, without mercy, driven by an eternal hunger that can never be satisfied. The castle's lower levels descend deep into the mountain itself, crypts and dungeons carved from living rock. Here, you find the tombs of Strahd's ancestors and servants, elaborate sarcophagi decorated with stone carvings and epitaphs praising the deceased. Many of these tombs have been disturbed, their occupants raised as undead to serve their dark master. The catacombs contain 40 crypts in total, each telling its own story of those who served Strahd in life or death. Skeletons and zombies shamble through these corridors, animated by necromantic energy, mindless but dangerous. Among the notable tombs is that of Saint Markovia, whose thighbone has become a powerful weapon against the undead, infused with the goodness of her spirit, even in death. Saint Markovia was a holy warrior who led a crusade against Strahd centuries ago, got closer to defeating him than anyone before or since. She successfully defended the abbey in Kresk against waves of vampire spawn, earning her sainthood through these acts of faith and courage. Overconfident with her victory, she took her forces to Castle Ravenloft to confront Strahd himself. What exactly happened within those walls remains unknown, but Markovia and her priests were never seen again, and it was over a week before Strahd reappeared. Her body was entombed in the catacombs beneath the castle, a final insult and a warning to any who might follow her example. Further down, you discover torture chambers equipped with devices designed to inflict maximum suffering. Rooms where screams echo endlessly against stone walls. Cells where prisoners are kept in darkness, so complete that they lose all sense of time and self. The deepest level contains something older than the castle, something that predates Strahd's arrival in this valley. Here, carved into the mountain's roots, you find evidence of a civilization that existed before, a people who built temples and sanctuaries in these caves, who worshipped powers that are better left unnamed. This could imply that Strahd discovered these ancient spaces when constructing his castle, incorporated them into his design, made use of the residual energies that lingered in these deep places. Some chambers he sealed away, sensing dangers even he did not wish to confront. Others he explored thoroughly, extracting knowledge and artifacts that enhanced his power. But let us return to Strahd himself, for the castle is merely an extension of its master, a physical manifestation of his will and his curse. As a vampire, Strahd possesses abilities that make him one of the most formidable creatures in any domain. He has the strength to tear stone with his bare hands, the speed to move faster than the eye can follow, the ability to transform into mist or into creatures of the night, such as wolves or bats. His senses are supernaturally acute. He can hear a heartbeat from rooms away, can smell fear like a predator scenting prey, can see in absolute darkness as clearly as a human sees in daylight. More than physical power, Strahd possesses a keen and calculating intelligence refined over centuries of existence. He is a master strategist who approaches every situation as he once approached military campaigns, analyzing strengths and weaknesses, identifying vulnerabilities, planning moves several steps ahead of his opponents. He studies those who enter his domain, learns their hopes and fears, their relationships and conflicts, and uses this knowledge to manipulate them with surgical precision. Strahd does not simply kill his enemies. He breaks them first, destroys their spirits before destroying their bodies. His magical abilities are equally formidable. Centuries of study have made Strahd one of the most accomplished necromancers in existence. He can raise and control undead, drain life force with a touch, curse his enemies with afflictions both mundane and supernatural. He has mastered spells of illusion and enchantment, can cloud minds and create false images, can dominate the wills of those with insufficient mental fortitude. His gaze alone can paralyze with fear, and his voice carries a hypnotic quality that makes resistance difficult for all but the strongest-willed. Yet for all his power, Strahd remains trapped by limitations, both physical and metaphorical. As a vampire, he cannot enter a private residence without invitation, cannot cross running water except at specific fords and bridges, must rest in the earth of his homeland during daylight hours. Holy symbols wielded by those with true faith can repel him, though such faith is rare in Barovia, where hope has been systematically crushed over generations. The sun itself, should it ever truly shine upon these lands, would destroy him in moments. More significantly, Strahd is trapped by the curse that defines his existence. He rules Barovia absolutely, holds power over every creature within the mists, commands armies of undead and monsters, and yet he cannot escape. He cannot leave his domain, cannot break free from the cycle that torments him. Every few decades, sometimes more frequently, sometimes less, Tatiana returns. She is reborn into a new body, lives a new life, has no memory of her previous incarnations. But Strahd always recognizes her, always knows her soul when he encounters it. Strahd's pursuit of Tatiana's reincarnations follows a pattern established over centuries. He begins with subtle approaches, appearing to the woman in dreams, sending her gifts, attempting to woo her as he once tried to woo the original Tatiana. When these methods fail, as they always do, for her soul instinctively recoils from him, he becomes more aggressive. He uses his servants to isolate her, eliminates those who would protect her, creates circumstances that force her to seek his help or his shelter. He promises safety, promises answers, promises anything she might desire, if only she will come to Castle Ravenloft willingly. and some incarnations do go to him, do walk through those massive doors and ascend the grand staircase to meet their fate. They go because they see no other choice, because everyone they love has been killed or driven away, because they believe perhaps they can reason with the monster who has destroyed their lives. Strahd receives them with courtesy bordering on reverence, treats them as honored guests rather than prisoners. He shows them the castle, shares his history, attempts to make them understand the depth of his devotion. He believes each time that this incarnation will be different, that this version of Tatiana will finally accept him, will finally see past the monster to the man who loves her with an intensity that has survived centuries. But it never works. The end is always the same, whether through suicide as the original Tatiana chose, or through accident, or through the intervention of heroes who arrive seeking to save her. Each incarnation dies before Strahd can truly claim her. Sometimes she dies in his very arms, life fading from her eyes even as he pleads with her to stay. Sometimes she dies at a distance, killed by circumstances he could not control or predict. The method matters less than the result. Tatiana escapes him once again, and Strahd is left alone in his castle, surrounded by servants who fear him and brides who cannot satisfy him, waiting for the cycle to begin anew. This eternal repetition is the true nature of his curse. Strahd is given hope again and again, shown the possibility of finally achieving what he most desires. And each time, that hope is snatched away at the last moment, transformed into fresh anguish, based on what we understand of the forces that govern Ravenloft. We can infer that the dark powers feed on this suffering, grow strong from the emotional torment of its Dark Lord. They have no intention of ever allowing Strahd to succeed, for his success would end the game, would resolve the tension that makes his punishment so exquisite. In rare moments of clarity, Strahd understands this. He recognizes that he is being toyed with, that powers greater than himself are manipulating events to ensure his eternal suffering. But this understanding changes nothing. He cannot stop pursuing Tatiana any more than he can stop existing. His obsession is the core of his being, the defining characteristic that makes him who and what he is. Without this pursuit, without this desperate attempt to reclaim what he destroyed through his own actions, Strahd would be nothing, would have no purpose, would be merely a powerful vampire ruling a domain of shadows for no reason beyond simple survival. So he continues, night after night, century after century. He sits in his study, reading reports from his servants about events throughout the domain. He walks the battlements of his castle, looking out over lands he conquered and now rules absolutely. He descends to his crypts, stands before Sergei's tomb, and sometimes speaks to his murdered brother. Though whether in remorse or justification, even Strahd himself might not know. He plays the organ in the castle's music room, filling the halls with melancholy melodies that echo the emptiness in his unliving heart. He practices his swordsmanship in the training yard, maintaining skills he mastered centuries ago, fighting against phantoms and memories. And he waits for Tatiana to return, waits for new victims to wander into his domain, fresh entertainment to break the monotony of immortal existence, waits for someone, anyone, who might provide a genuine challenge, who might be worthy of his attention and his respect. Most who enter Barovia die quickly, overwhelmed by the horrors they encounter, insufficient to the task of survival in this cursed land. But occasionally, someone interesting arrives, someone with courage or cleverness or sheer bloody-minded determination, someone who might actually pose a threat, who might even, impossibly, find a way to destroy him. Strahd both fears and hopes for these individuals. He fears them because they represent the possibility of true death, an end to his suffering and his existence. But he also hopes for them because if someone could actually defeat him, could break the curse that binds him, perhaps he could finally find peace. Perhaps he could be reunited with Sergei in whatever afterlife awaits, could face judgment for his crimes, and accept whatever punishment his actions have earned. Death, true death, would be a release from the endless cycle that has defined his existence for so long. But the curse is thorough, and those who govern this prison are not easily cheated. Even when Strahd is destroyed, when some hero manages to drive a stake through his heart or decapitate him or reduce him to ash, he does not stay dead. The mists gather around his remains, time passes, and eventually, inevitably, Strahd reforms. He wakes in his coffin in the crypts beneath Castle Ravenloft, whole and undamaged, returned to undeath to continue his eternal punishment. How much time he remains destroyed varies, sometimes days, sometimes years, but always he returns. The cycle cannot be broken from within, and those from outside rarely understand the true nature of what they face. Castle Ravenloft stands as a monument to all of this, to Strahd's achievements and his crimes, to his power and his imprisonment, to centuries of suffering both inflicted and endured. Its walls have witnessed countless deaths, have echoed with screams and sobbing, and the hollow laughter of the damned. Every stone is stained with blood, both literal and metaphorical. Every shadow might conceal a threat. Every corridor might lead to salvation or damnation with equal probability. As you stand in the castle's entrance hall, looking up at the grand staircase that curves into darkness, you understand that you have entered a place where the normal rules no longer apply, where hope is a trap and heroism often leads to nothing but an inventive death. Castle Ravenloft is not merely a location. It is a living tomb, a prison, a stage upon which the same tragedy has been performed hundreds of times, with only slight variations in the details. And now you are here, drawn into the story, given a role to play in whatever act currently unfolds. Somewhere above, in rooms you have not yet seen, Strahd von Zarovich waits. He knows you are here. He has known since before you entered the mists, has been watching your approach with interest and curiosity. He wonders what makes you different from all the others who have come before. He wonders if you will prove entertaining, if you will last long enough to make things interesting, or if you will simply be another corpse to add to the hundreds already scattered throughout his domain. The candles flicker in their sconces, and somewhere in the castle's depths, you hear a sound that might be a door closing or might be something else entirely. Section 4. The Dark Powers and the Greater Prison. But Barovia is not alone in its suffering. Beyond the mists that seal this valley from the outside world, there exists a vast network of other domains, each with its own Dark Lord, each with its own particular flavor of torment. You have been focused on Strahd's prison, on the lands he rules and the curse that binds him. But to truly understand the nature of Ravenloft, you must expand your awareness, must recognize that what you see here is merely one cell in a much larger dungeon. The demiplane of dread, as scholars and the few who understand its nature call it, exists outside normal reality. It is not part of any prime material world, not located in any dimension that can be reached through conventional travel or magic. Instead, it occupies a space between spaces, a pocket of existence carved from the fabric of reality itself, and maintained by powers that defy comprehension. The mists serve as both the walls of this prison and the mechanism by which it expands, reaching out into other worlds to claim new victims, to pull fresh domains into its embrace. At the heart of the demiplane's mystery are the dark powers themselves, entities whose nature remains fundamentally unknowable even to those who have studied them for lifetimes. They do not communicate directly, do not reveal themselves in any form that mortal minds can grasp. Instead, they make their presence known through their effects, through the domains they create and the Dark Lords they torment. Some who have glimpsed the truth speak of them as evil deities, dark gods who feed on suffering and despair. Others claim they are forces of cosmic justice, punishing the wicked by giving them exactly what they desire in the cruelest possible way. Still others whisper that the dark powers might be something far stranger, perhaps aspects of the demiplane itself, the prison achieving sentience and taking an active role in tormenting its inmates. What can be observed, what has been verified through bitter experience across countless domains, is that the dark powers follow certain patterns in how they operate. They seek out individuals who have committed terrible crimes, who have embraced evil so completely that their souls are stained beyond redemption. These individuals are then offered what appears to be an escape, a way to achieve their deepest desires through dark bargains and forbidden power. But the gift comes with a curse, always. The Dark Lord is given a domain to rule, granted power over their subjects, elevated to a position of absolute authority. And then they discover that their domain is a prison, that their power is hollow, that they have traded everything for nothing. Each Dark Lord is tormented by the one thing they desire most, being perpetually just beyond their reach. For Strahd, it is Tatiana, returning again and again, only to die before he can claim her. For others, the torment takes different forms, but the pattern remains consistent. Hope offered and then snatched away. Desires frustrated at the moment of fulfillment. Suffering refined to an exquisite edge that never dulls no matter how many centuries pass. The domains themselves vary wildly in size, culture, technology, and the nature of their horrors. Some are vast territories spanning thousands of square miles, containing multiple cities and diverse landscapes. Others are tiny, perhaps a single building or a small island, concentrated spaces where horror is distilled to its purest form. The mists connect these domains, allow passage between them under certain circumstances, though the rules governing such passage are inconsistent and seem to change according to whims beyond mortal understanding. To the north and east of Barovia, across borders marked by shifts in the mists, lies Lamordia, a domain of cold mountains and colder science. This land is locked in perpetual winter, its people struggling to survive in temperatures that would kill those unprepared for such extremes. The domain is associated with Victor Mordenheim, a brilliant scientist who sought to unlock the secrets of life itself, to create living beings through the application of pure reason and medical knowledge. He succeeded, after a fashion, creating a creature called Adam, an artificial man stitched together from corpses, and animated through means both scientific and supernatural. But Adam was not the perfect creation Mordenheim envisioned. The creature possessed intelligence and emotions, felt pain and loneliness, desired companionship, and understanding that its creator refused to provide. Mordenheim rejected his creation, called it an abomination, attempted to destroy it. Adam survived, and the relationship between creator and created has defined this domain ever since. Based on different accounts, the true Dark Lord of Lamordia might be Adam himself, or might be the scientist, trapped in eternal conflict. The torment here is obvious. Mordenheim desired to create life, to play God, to prove his superiority over nature itself. And the dark powers granted his wish, but ensured that his creation would never be what he wanted, that his success would always be tainted by failure. East of Barovia, across borders that shift with the mists, lies Haslin, a domain of deserts and oppressive heat, the complete opposite of Lamordia's frozen wastes. Haslin is ruled by Haslik, a wizard of tremendous power who was once subjected to terrible torture by rival mages in another world. His body was burned, his face scarred beyond recognition, his hands twisted into claws. He escaped his tormentors through a desperate bargain with dark powers, was granted the strength to destroy his enemies utterly. The dark powers then gave him Haslin, a domain where he rules as absolute monarch, where his word is law and his power unchallenged. But Haslick's torment is subtle and profound. Despite his magical might, despite his mastery of spells that can reshape reality, he cannot heal his own scars. Every mirror shows him the face of a monster. Every glance at his hands reminds him of what was done to him. He surrounds himself with beautiful things, fills his palace with art and music, maintains a court of slaves chosen for their physical perfection. Yet he himself remains hideous, marked by suffering, unable to escape the evidence of his victimhood, no matter how much power he accumulates. The people of Haslin live under a brutal tyranny, subject to Haslick's whims, and his need to inflict on others the pain he himself endured. The domain is ravaged by magical experiments, with abominations roaming the landscape, and the very fabric of magic cracked and erratic. Those caught working against the domains established order-face punishments designed to serve as warnings to others. South of Barovia stretches Falkovnia, a domain that has undergone transformation. This is a land besieged by the dead, where on nights of the full moon, legions of zombies emerge from the mists and attack the fortifications of the living. The domain is ruled by General Vladska Drakov, a military commander whose ambition and brutality knew no bounds. Under her iron fist, Falkovnia has become a martial state where every citizen serves the military or supports it directly, where resources dwindle and survival is the only goal. This suggests that Falkovnia is a nightmare of militarism and survival horror combined. The people suffer under a regime that devours their children, that takes every able-bodied person and grinds them into soldiers, that knows nothing but preparation for defense against waves of undead that can never be permanently defeated. They live in constant fear of conscription, of being selected for suicide missions, of displeasing their ruler and facing execution. Within the Demiplane, domains connect to form larger landmasses called clusters, groups of domains that share borders and allow more regular travel between them. The core, which contains Barovia and many of the larger, more established domains, forms the largest cluster, a continent of darkness where dozens of Dark Lords rule their personal hells in uncomfortable proximity to one another. Other domains exist in isolation, sealed away from all others, their Dark Lords imprisoned in perfect solitude, with only their victims for company. These are called islands of terror, pockets of horror completely cut off from the rest of the Demiplane. The borders between domains are not always clear, not always fixed. Sometimes the mists part to allow passage, creating temporary connections between domains that might be thousands of miles apart, or might neighbor each other in some strange geography that defies normal spatial relationships. A traveler might walk through fog for 10 minutes and emerge in a completely different domain, facing entirely new dangers. These border crossings follow rules that seem designed to maximize suffering rather than facilitate travel. A person fleeing from danger might find a crossing that appears to offer escape, only to emerge in a domain with horrors even worse than what they fled. The Vistani serve as the primary facilitators of travel and trade between domains, their unique ability to navigate the mists allowing them to act as merchants, messengers, and guides. They carry goods from one domain to another, deliver letters and packages, smuggle contraband across borders that exist more in concept than physical reality. But even the Vistani cannot fully control their passage through the mists. Sometimes they find themselves redirected, arriving at unexpected destinations, or taking far longer to complete journeys that should have been simple, suggesting that the forces governing the demiplane manipulate even these relatively free travelers. The nature of time within the demiplane adds another layer of complexity. Time does not flow consistently across all domains, does not move at the same rate or in the same direction. A person might spend a week traveling through the mists and emerge to find that years have passed in the domain they left, or that they have somehow arrived before they departed. Some domains seem locked in specific historical periods, their technology and culture frozen at particular points in development, while others advance normally, their people progressing through generations, while neighboring domains remain static. Throughout all these domains and spaces, throughout the vast structure of the demiplane of dread, one truth remains constant. Suffering is the currency that powers everything. Based on the patterns observed across countless domains and centuries, we can reasonably conclude that the dark powers feed on anguish, grow strong from despair, maintain their prison through the accumulated torment of countless souls. Every tear shed, every scream of pain, every moment of hopeless despair strengthens the walls of this cosmic jail. The Dark Lords suffer most intensely, but their suffering radiates outward, affecting everyone trapped in their domains, creating ripples of misery that spread throughout the demiplane. And yet, impossibly, life continues. People fall in love, have children, build homes, and plant gardens. They celebrate what little joys they can find, hold festivals and weddings, maintain traditions passed down through generations. They resist the grinding despair not through grand heroism, but through small, daily acts of defiance, choosing to smile when they could weep, offering kindness when cruelty would be easier, maintaining hope when all evidence suggests hope is foolish. These small acts of humanity, these tiny candles flickering in infinite darkness, might be exactly what the dark powers want, might be designed to make the suffering more exquisite by contrast, or they might represent something the dark powers cannot control, cannot extinguish, a fundamental aspect of the mortal spirit that persists despite all attempts to crush it. You stand now with this knowledge heavy upon your shoulders, understanding that Barovia is merely one thread in a vast weave of suffering, that Strahd's curse is one note in a symphony of anguish that spans countless domains. The horror you face is not unique, not special, but part of a pattern that repeats endlessly throughout the demiplane. Whether this knowledge offers comfort or deepens despair depends on perspective, depends on whether you draw strength from knowing others share your burden or weakness, from understanding the true scope of the trap that holds you. The mists swirl around you, and in their depths, you might catch glimpses of other places, other domains where other heroes face other horrors. These visions are brief, uncertain, might be real or might be illusions designed to break your spirit, but they remind you that you are not alone in this nightmare, that throughout the demiplane of dread, countless souls struggle against darkness, fight to maintain their humanity, refuse to surrender despite impossible odds. And now, with this broader understanding of the prison that contains Barovia, with knowledge of the forces that govern this place and the other domains that exist within the mists, you must return your focus to the specific horrors that await in Strahd's domain. For while the demiplane of dread is vast and contains multitudes of suffering, your story unfolds here, in these dark valleys and shadow-haunted forests, under the watchful gaze of the vampire who rules from his castle on the mountain. The road stretches before you once more, winding through the perpetual twilight, leading you deeper into the heart of Barovia's curse. Every step brings you closer to whatever fate awaits, whether that be triumph or tragedy, salvation or damnation. The mists watch and wait. The dark powers observe with whatever passes for their attention. And somewhere in Castle Ravenloft, Count Strahd von Zarovich continues his eternal vigil, both jailer and prisoner in the domain that bears his family's name. Section 5. Heroes, Artifacts, and the Question of Hope. The wind carries whispers through the streets of the village of Barovia, and among those whispers, you hear tales that speak not just of horror, but of resistance, of those who have fought back against the darkness. These stories are fewer, more carefully guarded, for speaking openly of defiance can draw unwanted attention from Castle Ravenloft. But they exist nonetheless, passed along in hushed voices, offering fragments of hope to those desperate enough to grasp at such dangerous things. Among the names spoken with reverence and fear alike is that of Dr. Rudolf van Richten, perhaps the most renowned monster hunter to have ever walked the demiplane of dread. Van Richten did not choose this path from ambition or desire for glory. He was once a simple physician, a doctor who tended to the sick in his homeland, who lived a quiet life with his wife and son. But tragedy found him, as it finds so many in these cursed lands. Vistani raiders kidnapped his son, sold the boy to a vampire named Baron Metis. Van Richten pursued them with the desperation only a parent can know, eventually tracking down the vampire and destroying it. But his son was already dead, and his wife succumbed to grief not long after. What remained was a man hollowed out by loss, filled with nothing but purpose. Van Richten dedicated what remained of his life to hunting monsters, to ensuring that no other family would suffer as his had suffered. Over the decades that followed, he became a legend. He tracked vampires through a dozen domains, studied their weaknesses, learned how to turn their strengths against them. He hunted werewolves, understanding their pack dynamics and exploiting the rivalries that exist within lycanthrope communities. He faced mummy lords, ancient liches, demons that had slipped through cracks in reality. Based on what we know of his accomplishments, he succeeded where armies failed, destroyed creatures that should have been far beyond his capabilities. Van Richten documented his knowledge in a series of guides, journals that detailed everything he learned about the various creatures that plague the domains. These guides became essential tools for those who would follow in his footsteps, offering insights that could mean the difference between survival and death. The information within was hard-won, purchased with blood and suffering, refined through decades of experience. Van Richten wrote of vampires and their vulnerabilities, of werewolves and how to cure or destroy them, of ghosts and the methods by which they might be put to rest. Each guide represented years of research, countless encounters, and knowledge that no scholar studying from safety could ever acquire. But success came with costs beyond the physical scars Van Richten accumulated. He was cursed by a Vistani elder whose family he had destroyed in his pursuit of the vampire who killed his son. The curse was simple and terrible. Those who became his friends would die. Van Richten watched it happen again and again, saw companions fall to accidents or monsters, or simple misfortune. Eventually, he learned to keep his distance, to work alone, to avoid forming attachments that would doom others to the fate his curse demanded. Yet even Van Richten could not remain completely isolated. He took on an apprentice, a young Vistani woman named Esmeralda Davenir. Their relationship was complicated from the beginning, fraught with the tension between Van Richten's mistrust of the Vistani and Esmeralda's heritage. She had sought him out initially for revenge, blaming him for crimes against her people. But when she confronted him, when she saw the sorrow in his eyes and heard the story of his loss, she stayed her hand. They formed an uneasy partnership, hunting monsters together, learning from one another despite the mistrust that never quite disappeared. Esmeralda proved to be a formidable hunter in her own right. She possessed natural talent, intelligence, and a determination that matched Van Richten's own. Under his tutelage, she became skilled in tracking creatures of darkness, in identifying their weaknesses, in exploiting those weaknesses with surgical precision. Some accounts suggest she eventually surpassed her mentor in raw combat ability, though Van Richten's decades of accumulated knowledge remained unmatched. She lost a leg during one of their hunts, replaced it with a prosthetic of wood and metal that she enchanted to serve her needs. Eventually, the tension between them became too great. Van Richten could never fully trust a Vistani, no matter how much Esmeralda proved herself. The weight of his past, the memory of his son's death at Vistani hands, created a barrier he could not overcome. Esmeralda recognized this limitation, understood that their partnership was slowly destroying the respect they held for one another. She suggested they part ways, while some fragment of their bond remained intact, and Van Richten agreed. They went their separate paths, each continuing to hunt monsters alone, carrying the lessons learned from their time together. Van Richten eventually came to Barovia, drawn by reports of Strahd von Zarovich and the domain he rules. The vampire count represents everything Van Richten has spent his life fighting against. A creature of immense power who has caused suffering on a scale few can imagine. Van Richten has studied Strahd from a distance, gathered intelligence, waited for the right moment and the right allies to make his move. He knows that facing Strahd directly would be suicide, that even with all his experience and knowledge, he is outmatched. But Van Richten has never been one to abandon a fight simply because the odds are poor. Esmeralda followed him to Barovia, drawn by the same target, perhaps seeking to prove herself, or perhaps unable to let her mentor face this danger alone, despite their separation. She operates independently, maintains her distance, but works toward the same goal. This suggests that whatever drove them apart was not strong enough to completely sever the bond they formed. But monster hunters, no matter how skilled, require more than knowledge and courage to face creatures like Strahd. They need weapons, artifacts of power capable of harming beings that laugh at conventional steel, and Barovia contains such items, relics from the past that hold power sufficient to threaten even the master of Castle Ravenloft. The most significant of these is the Sun Sword, a blade that once belonged to Strahd von Zarovich himself. This was no ordinary weapon, even when Strahd carried it in life. It was a symbol of his position, a ceremonial blade with a platinum hilt and guard. But when Barovia was swallowed by the mists, when the curse descended and transformed this valley into a prison, the Sun Sword underwent a transformation as well. It became something more, a weapon capable of channeling radiant energy, of producing light that burns like true sunlight. Some accounts suggest that Strahg's spirit became bound to the blade, that the weapon carries not just power, but consciousness, a fragment of the murdered brother who seeks vengeance against his killer. When Strahd died, when his blood spilled on the stones of Castle Ravenloft, Strahd recognized the threat the Sun Sword represented. He could not destroy it himself, for the weapon rejected his touch, burned him with holy fire when he attempted to grasp it. So he employed a powerful wizard named Kazan to break the blade, to shatter the crystal that formed its edge and render it harmless. Kazan succeeded in shattering the blade, but the hilt survived, was stolen before Strahd could secure it. The hilt passed through many hands over the centuries that followed, hidden and lost and found again, waiting for someone worthy to restore it to its full power. Based on the weapon's properties and history, reuniting the hilt with a new blade would restore the Sun Sword's power, would create a weapon capable of harming Strahd in ways that few other things in Barovia can. The blade burns with sunlight, anathema to all vampires, capable of dealing wounds that even Strahd's regenerative abilities struggle to heal. In the hands of a skilled warrior, blessed by righteous purpose, the Sunsword could conceivably end Strahd's reign. Another artifact of significance is the holy symbol of Ravenkind, a platinum amulet shaped like the sun, with a large crystal embedded in its center. This holy symbol predates Strahd's transformation, was first wielded by a paladin named Lugdana, who was among the earliest settlers of the valley. According to legend, a celestial raven delivered the symbol to Lugdana so she could use it to root out vampires that plagued the region. This could imply that even before Strahd's curse, Barovia attracted creatures of darkness, that perhaps the valley was always touched by forces that would eventually transform it into a domain of dread. The symbol possesses power to hold vampires at bay, to produce sunlight that drives back the undead, to protect its wielder from the corrupting influence of darkness. The Tome of Strahd represents a different kind of power, not a weapon, but knowledge. This book is Strahd's journal, his autobiography written in his own hand. Within its pages, he recorded his history, his transformation, his crimes, and his regrets. The book contains information Strahd would not willingly share, insights into his psychology and his weaknesses. More than that, it offers a window into the man he was before he became a monster, demonstrates that he was once capable of love and honor and sacrifice before those qualities were twisted into obsession and cruelty. Reading the tome can be dangerous, for Strahd guards it jealously, reacts with fury when he learns that others have read his private thoughts. But for those seeking to understand their enemy, seeking to find weaknesses that might be exploited, the tome is invaluable. These three artifacts, the Sunsword, the holy symbol of Ravenkind, and the Tome of Strahd, are often spoken of together. Three tools that together might give heroes the power they need to challenge the vampire count on something approaching equal footing. But finding them is no simple task, for they are hidden throughout Barovia, protected by guardians, or lost in places of terrible danger. Madame Eva's Taraka readings often guide seekers to these artifacts, though whether her guidance serves the seeker's interests or Strahd's remains a question that has never been satisfactorily answered. Beyond artifacts and monster hunters, there exist other forms of resistance throughout Barovia, quieter and more subtle. The Keepers of the Feather are a secret society that opposes Strahd in ways that avoid direct confrontation. The Martikov family, who run the Blue Water Inn in Vallaki and the Wizard of Wine's winery, are among their most prominent members. These individuals are wereravens, capable of transforming into ravens to gather intelligence and carry messages. They maintain networks of information, help those who seek to resist Strahd's rule, provide sanctuary when possible. Their work is dangerous, requiring them to maintain false faces of cooperation while working against the Count's interests from within the shadows. But even with artifacts, allies, and knowledge, the question remains: can Strahd truly be defeated? Can the curse that binds Barovia be broken? The answer is complicated, layered with uncertainty and conflicting possibilities. Strahd can be destroyed, certainly. Heroes have managed it before, have driven stakes through his heart, or decapitated him, or reduced him to ash through application of fire or sunlight. But destroying his body does not end him permanently. The mists gather, time passes, and Strahd reforms in his coffin beneath Castle Ravenloft. He wakes whole and undamaged, returned to continue his eternal torment. The cycle cannot be broken through violence alone, for the dark powers have no intention of releasing their prize. Escape from Barovia is similarly problematic. No spell allows one to simply leave, not teleportation, not plane shift, not even wish. The mists form an absolute barrier, a wall that conventional magic cannot breach. Those who attempt to leave find themselves turned around, walking in circles, emerging back into the domain they tried to escape. The only reliable exits are controlled by the dark powers themselves, opened when it serves their purposes to release prisoners or admit new ones. Some theories suggest that the curse could be broken if Strahd were to change fundamentally, to abandon his obsession with Tatiana and embrace a different path. The dark powers feed on his suffering, on the cycle of hope and despair that defines his existence. If Strahd stopped pursuing Tatiana, stopped playing the role assigned to him, he might theoretically cease to be useful to his jailers. But this solution requires Strahd to act against his fundamental nature, to give up the one thing that gives his existence meaning. Such a transformation seems unlikely, perhaps impossible. Another possibility involves replacing Strahd as Dark Lord, finding someone else to take on the curse and rule Barovia in his place. This would require making a pact with dark powers in the Amber Temple, accepting corruption and damnation to free Strahd from his prison. Such a bargain would be morally monstrous, trading one person's freedom for another's enslavement, solving nothing while potentially creating a Dark Lord, even worse than Strahd. The truth, bitter and uncompromising, is that Barovia was designed to be inescapable, that the curse binding Strahd was crafted to be unbreakable. Those who enter seeking to save this land, seeking to free its people, or destroy its master, face odds that approach impossibility. The house always wins, because the house is maintained by forces that exist beyond mortal comprehension, that have refined the art of torment over countless domains and endless centuries. And yet, people continue to try. Heroes continue to enter the mists, continue to take up weapons against monsters, continue to believe that this time will be different. Perhaps they are fools, tilting at windmills, throwing their lives away on impossible quests, or perhaps their defiance itself has value, represents something the dark powers cannot fully control or extinguish. Perhaps the choice to fight, even knowing defeat is likely, is what separates heroes from victims, what defines humanity in the face of overwhelming darkness. Van Richten continues his hunt despite knowing the odds. Esmeralda sharpens her blades despite the curse that claimed her mentor's friends. The Keepers of the Feather gather intelligence and provide aid despite the danger it brings to their families. And somewhere in the village of Barovia, Irina Kaliana prepares to face whatever fate awaits her. Determined to survive one more day despite being the focus of a vampire's obsessive love. These acts of resistance, large and small, create ripples throughout the domain. They introduce variations into a cycle that has repeated for centuries, create possibilities that might not otherwise exist. Whether those possibilities can lead to genuine change, to breaking the curse that binds this land, remains unknown. But the attempt itself matters, carries weight, represents the refusal to surrender that defines the best of mortal spirit. You stand now at a crossroads, literal or metaphorical, with choices before you. You can seek out Van Richten, offer your aid to the greatest monster hunter the domains have known. You can search for the artifacts hidden throughout Barovia, gather the tools that might give you a fighting chance. You can ally with the Keepers of the Feather, add your strength to those who resist in quiet ways, or you can attempt something entirely different. Forge a new path through this cursed land. Introduce variables that have never been tested before. The road stretches ahead into shadow, and Castle Ravenloft looms above, its master watching and waiting. The mists swirl at the edges of vision, and somewhere in the darkness, wolves howl their mournful songs. Your story continues, and how it ends, whether in triumph or tragedy, remains to be written. Thank you for walking this dark road, for listening to these tales of suffering and resistance, of monsters and heroes, of a land trapped in eternal twilight. If you enjoyed this journey through Barovia's cursed history and haunted present, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until we meet again in the mists, may you find whatever light exists in the darkness, and may that light be enough to guide you home.